Share with you an event over the weekend that did not get any media attention. And I'm actually not knocking local Kansas City media for this. The folks involved with this, frankly, didn't want to bring a lot of attention to what was happening last night in the basement of Union Station. And that was an event on behalf of Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, a great organization that was founded by a Kansan, founded by a man named Adam Barron, who has deep ties to the Wichita area. And they were all supposed to be in Israel for a few days this week. And obviously, after the 12-day war, as it was dubbed by President Trump a few weeks ago, that trip was not allowed to happen. So in the last couple of weeks, they had to whip together an event here this week. And they decided to do it right here in Kansas City. Now, there were folks from 17 different states at this dinner last night that I was at, that I was the MC of. You had lawmakers from all over the country. You had governors from around the country last night who were there. And it was a great showing of strength on behalf of combating anti-Semitism, not just in Kansas City, but around America. And all these folks, there was about 125 people in the room, and they were all supposed to be in Israel this week together. And for obvious reasons, that couldn't happen. So they decided, we're going to Kansas City. Now, of course, a lot of the founders and people heavily involved have deep ties to Kansas City. But you think about what just happened here in the last few weeks with Sarah Milgram, the young lady from Prairie Village who lost her life for no reason other than being Jewish. You think about, obviously, what that has done to upend the Kansas City Jewish community in general, and what that has done, frankly, to the Jewish community at large around the country. And it had deep ties right here to Kansas City. So the event last night included a lot of speakers, many names of people you'll know. Chris Croft here locally, State Rep, House Majority Leader. We heard from Chris Kobach, Attorney General of Kansas. Jim Pillins, the governor of Nebraska, he spoke last night. Randy Fine, who won that special election down in Florida back in April, he was hilarious. He's a member of Congress. He was really funny. Now, that guy could do stand-up comedy with this man named Ron Segev. He's about 39 years old. I think he said he's going to be 40 this fall. And he told his story about escaping the Nova Music Festival on October 7th of 2023. And he talked about the Hamas terrorists shooting up cars right next to him. He talked about hearing those gunshots for hours on end as he is fleeing on foot. The Hamas terrorists who were trying to obviously kill him and basically all of his friends. He was there with about 30 buddies at this music festival on October 7th of 2023. And he went through his story, his testimonial, blow by blow last night. This was in the basement of Union Station. He's telling the story to about 125 of us. And not that most of us needed further confirmation on what kind of horror ensued that day. But when you hear this guy tell the story about being at the music festival, the music stops, and suddenly you know exactly what is going on. You know that terrorism has come to your front door, but you still don't understand the breadth of what is about to happen. You get in your car, you start driving out of the festival, you run into a traffic jam, you hear the bullets getting closer and closer and closer to the point where there are 2-3 cars behind you. You bail out of that vehicle. You start running. You don't know where you're running, but you're running. And you spend about an hour and a half just basically running for your life. At one point, Ron tells the story about how he found a bunch of abandoned cars. He's hiding behind a bunch of abandoned cars as Hamas terrorists are literally shooting at the vehicles that he's hiding behind. And he's trying to figure out, what am I doing to get out of here? He's with his younger brother. And they're about 40 to 50 yards away. Well, he was talking in meters, so give or take. We're all on the same page here, right? 40, 50 yards away. from another group of vehicles where he thinks those cars are running. He sees them. He's like, man, one of those cars has got to be able to move. So they make a sprint 40 to 50 yards, basically across an open field, desert, whatever it might be, to get to these other vehicles, hoping one of them will turn on and they can get out of this situation that they're in. One of them turns on, and they just hightail out of there as bullets are whizzing by the car. Now, think about this. If a bullet catches one of those tires, they're done, right? It's over. The bullets never once hit the car. And they're able to get to a relatively safe situation. And when they get to what they perceive to be a relatively safe situation, the bullets are no longer, all that close to them, and they're not getting shot at anymore in this car. There are hundreds of people suddenly running at him because this whole scene was just a chaotic mess, right? You're talking thousands and thousands of people at this music festival. People are running in God knows what direction, and they're just looking for help. So he's now suddenly finding himself in this vehicle with just his brother. Now he pulls up on the road and hundreds of people are running at him. He ends up fitting 11 people into his car. And they're able to end up finding safety after, about a 30-minute drive, give or take. That's the kind of stuff that these people dealt with on that day, October 7th, 2023. And it was one of the most powerful in-person stories that I had ever heard tell. And I know that, our foreign policy is controversial on both sides of the political aisle. There's no doubt about it. But I can tell you right now, the appreciation in that room for President Trump and what he has done on the foreign policy front was a very, very clear part of the message last night. And it's never an either or. People on both the left and a handful on the right want to make this weird suggestion that it's, we either do what we did in Iran last Saturday night with the men and women at a Whiteman Air Force Base, or we feed people who are hungry, we help people who are homeless. We do either the bombing in Iran or we help people in need. It's not that black and white. It never is. Yeah, is it about helping an ally when we do something like we did last week in Iran? Absolutely. It's also about our own safety here back at home in the United States. And at a time when anti-Semitism is on the rise in the U.S. Heck, we're an election away from potentially having the leader of the largest city in the West, that's New York City, have a clear anti-Semite in this guy Mamdani leading that city, New York City. So to say this stuff is on the back burner, this stuff is falling by the wayside, is sadly simply not true. And these folks convened yesterday in Kansas City for a really powerful evening with a star-studded lineup of Kansans and Missourians, but also 17 states represented last night in the basement of Union Station for a great dinner, event, and show to combat anti-Semitism. And their website is combatantisemitism.org if you're not familiar with them. But it's amazing that, they couldn't have local media there. There was a lot, as you would imagine, a lot of security there last night as well. And that is just a reality of the world that we currently find ourselves in. So the big, beautiful bill has obviously been the center and will be the center of attention this week. The president wants to sign that thing by Independence Day, which is coming up on Friday. Yes, July 4th, just a few days away. And the president wants that thing on his desk by then, obviously. And, I think he's going to get it. Listen, Trump is on an absolute roll right now. Whether you love him or you like him or you can't stand him, he is on a roll over these last 10 days. Markets hitting record highs late last week. He has some mojo on the foreign stage, obviously, with what happened in Iran and then into the Netherlands last week. So he is right now bulletproof, no pun intended. And I believe that Republicans in the Senate are going to do what they have to do starting up in about an hour and a half or so. They're going to get back to business, reconvene to try to get this bill passed, then get it to the House by Wednesday morning. And the president obviously wants to be signing this thing on Independence Day. And frankly, with the mojo that he's got right now, I believe he's going to get his wish. Coming up next on KCMO, we'll obviously update you as that story unfolds this morning. But yes, expect the Senate to get back to work this morning at 8 o'clock Central Time when they will continue to try to pass the big, beautiful bill. And then it will have to go back to the House. And from what I'm seeing, the House is saying the earliest we could get back to it is Wednesday. So that gives them a day and a half of wiggle room to get it on the president's desk for a big Friday signing. Let's go. Let's go. Good morning, 6:15 as we kick it off on KCMO. Coming up, the president did do a big sit down yesterday with Fox Business Network. And there was something that he said about America that has been lost in the political conversation that needs to be brought back to the forefront. I loved everything that he said here. It's so simple, yet so effective. And I'll share it with you next on KCMO.
Call Mundo 913-408-7957. Now on 95.7 FM.
Got so caught up in my story, I forgot to also mention we've got Bill O'Reilly coming up today at 8 o'clock. So make sure that you are tuned in if you're at the office by then on the stream, on our app, KCMO Talk Radio app. A great excuse to download that this morning as we kick off a Monday. The iHeart app or just on the website, kcmotalkradio.com, and play it there. 8:05, Bill O'Reilly is going to be here on KCMO. A lot to talk to him about. So the president sat down yesterday with Maria Bartiromo, Fox Business Network. I don't know when the guy rests. I mean, he just comes off this trip. He goes to the Netherlands. You know, he's bombing Iranian nuclear sites. He's doing the commander-in-chief stuff. He's trying to get the big, beautiful bill to his desk. You know he's twisting arms behind the scenes. And he still sits down for a 30-minute interview with Maria Bartiromo of Fox Business. And they got into the weeds, obviously. They talked about the big, beautiful bill and all that stuff. But I know it's early on a Monday. The thing the president said to me, watching the interview, that stood out the most was not about policy. I'm not going to go wonky thing within the big, beautiful bill. Heck, it's 940 pages. These guys were reading it apparently over the weekend. They had no choice. The Democrats pulled this move where they said, just to delay the vote, we're going to force the Republicans to read the 940-page bill. So I'm not going deep in the weeds on that part of it. But one thing that President Trump said in the interview that stood out to me above the rest was how he was a cheerleader for the country. And isn't that just refreshing? Isn't it so refreshing to have a guy, I mean, after all the people that you have right now who have major power in this country apologizing on behalf of America, saying we're not good enough, we've never been great, we'll only be great if we have a big bloated bureaucracy, all these things that they obviously have tried to achieve over the last 15 years or so, give or take, especially with the last guy in charge. To have a guy just sit there and say, you know, I'm a cheerleader for America. That's what I am. To kick off the Independence Day week, this had me feeling good.
No, it's very important. I'm a cheerleader also for the country, aside from everything else, like you are. We brought spirit back. We brought respect and dignity back. When I went to the European, I was in that beautiful place with the king and the queen, and it was like beautiful. Everything's so nice. But when I went to the Netherlands.
Just stop real quick there. Notice how he did the weave. I think he was like, where was I again? He's been so busy. He's trying to figure it out. So he does the weave. Oh, this beautiful place, the king and the queen. He kills time for about 5 seconds, and then he comes back around to the Netherlands. That is, I mean, this guy could host a radio show, obviously, in his sleep. He'd be great at it. But that's the weave that I'm talking about right there. That was brilliant.
And I looked. Everybody was coming up, Mr. President, Mr. President. They didn't do that a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. These are the big countries. This is Germany and France and all of them. I mean, a big group of countries. They respect America again. They laughed at us. They thought we were a joke. You had a president that kept falling downstairs and falling on stages and couldn't find an entrance he makes a little speech that lasted for about a half a minute. And he looks around, he's looking for stairs. There's like 6 different stairs, and he can't figure out which stair. We were laughed at all over the world. More importantly than that, what they did to the country. What they did to the country with allowing 21 million people will never be forgotten.
Man, that's about a minute and 8 seconds of President Trump. And you know what phrase he should start using? He can steal this from me if he wants. Give me a little credit. I'll take it, Mr. President. But he says we were getting laughed at all over the world, right? He goes on the note, I'm a cheerleader for the country. We've got spirit back. We've got respect back. And we were getting laughed at with the last guy. And, come on, man. One line that he could use is, we have gone from being laughed at to getting laughed with. Because Trump is genuinely hysterical. Like, even if you can somehow get over your TDS, the guy's hilarious. So now we have people, none of that going on right now. It's rah, rah, America. And to think that only one political party wants to basically carry that mantle and do the job of being the rah-rah America party tells you a lot about where our American politics are today, does it not? Trump's just like, I'm the cheerleader here for America. I just want to lead the country and promote America and talk about the greatness of America. And yeah, make it great again. That's what I want to do. That's my goal. That's what I would like to accomplish. And to think that that is somehow one thing that one of our two major political parties is only interested in doing today says a lot about the climate that we find ourselves in. And frankly, it's just a stroke of luck for Trump and the Republicans that they find themselves in charge right now at a time when their political opponents really have no interest in waving that American flag. It frankly says a lot more about them than it even does Trump or anybody in charge in his political party on the Republican side of the aisle, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. But that right there stood out to me above anything else I heard over the weekend from the president because it was just refreshing, yet so simple, and should not be in any ways a partisan thought. But sad to say, it is in 2025. Coming up on KCMO, we have the 6 at 6, 15 minutes away, and Bill O'Reilly, 8 o'clock hour. Don't miss it.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Well, speaking of Keatsman, he sent me a story over the weekend, and I was like, this is just classic. I know we got the World Cup coming up in about a year here in Kansas City, and the hype is to the moon, man. Now, I'm hoping that this thing is just a banger for Kansas City, and we get maybe Mark wants Germany or Brazil. I think those are his 1-2 options, right, Mark?
I like the Netherlands, too.
Oh, you're a big Netherlands guy. John, who do you want to see come to town for the World Cup? You got a preference when it comes to countries?
You know, as much as I follow soccer, it's MLS and English Premier. The world, I don't really care. It'll be fun for Kansas City in general, so I don't have a preference. Ancestral, Germany, I don't know.
Can we all agree that we are not going to get Team USA, that is like just not going to happen here?
Yeah, I would guess not.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure.
I would imagine we'd get Argentina, Germany, or any of the others either, but I guess it's a draw, so we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I wouldn't count us out.
All right.
Heart of America.
All right. The heart of America. There you go. Trump's going to send Team USA here.
Yeah,
that
the
would
smart
be great.
teams, Germany might be a little wiser. The smart teams might consider the fact that it's 3 hours either way to go to a match
Yeah, that's a good point.
to make this the home base.
That would be great. That would be great. I promise you I'll go if Team USA is here. But I bring this up because Keatsman sent me this over the weekend on a text. It's a story from ESPN. The Club World Cup group stage saw 1 million empty seats in the stands over the 48 games in the tournament so far, a year before the United States hosts the 2026 World Cup. 9 teams that advanced to the round of 16 are from Europe, 4 from Brazil, 1 each from Major League Soccer, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia. About 57% of publicly listed capacity was filled for the 48 group stage matches, which included crowds of 3,400 and 6,700 in Orlando and crowds of about 5,000 and 8,000 in Cincinnati. FIFA did not provide specific capacities for the tournament, despite repeated requests from the Associated Press.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize which markets they were in. I kind of follow it. Manchester City's club I like, and they're in it. But it seemed underwhelming, the response. And they come around and do these tours. English clubs and different clubs come over here for the summer to rake in a little money, but I don't know that that's working.
No.
Plus, this is a big tournament. This isn't just like a 4-club tournament thing. This is like, what, 16, 20?
Yeah,
24?
16.
I mean,
16.
PSG's in it, Paris Saint-Germain.
Whew, that's a bad look. 48
Yeah.
games. The capacity could have been about 3 million. Instead, total attendance was 1.67 million.
Went to the World Cup tournament and a Disney movie broke out. Right? A Disney premiere.
Anecdotally, I had a friend and his son that drove to Cincinnati to see Dortmund play.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting.
What did they say about it? Anything?
They had a good time. They said there was a bar set up across the street, kind of themed for that team. So they kind of built it up.
Yeah, no line at the bar because apparently no one went.
Looked like it was a fun time.
Well, that's interesting. 5,000 in Cincinnati, and some of those came into Cincinnati. Didn't even draw from the locals there.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right here in Kansas City. So, I mean, I know that the World Cup is going to be a different beast, but don't forget, Kansas City is projecting 650,000 visitors for the World Cup next year. We are a population as a metro of about 2.5, 2.6 million people. And this estimate is obviously over several weeks. It's not for like one weekend or one game. It's over several weeks. And that number includes ticketed and non-ticketed fans, as well as officials and guests and sponsors and dignitaries and celebrities and everything else. Now, I want to see that happen. Let me be very clear. It will be great for Kansas City if that happens. But I continue to fail to see how that number gets achieved. And not just because of this new report from ESPN and the Associated Press about some of these group stage events that's happening right now here in the U.S. this year. It's not just about that, but this is certainly another layer, another data point that would suggest we may be getting a little aggressive on these estimates for the World Cup 1 year from now. We may be shooting just a little too high. And my experience in just life and business in general is this. You're better off shooting a little lower and then exceeding your expectations than going for the jugular, going for the gold, and coming up way short of those expectations where you hype everybody up. You say, this is going to be great unless you've got a built-in excuse. And I can't help but think to myself that a built-in excuse for if the World Cup comes up short of expectations is going to be the one and only Donald J. Trump. The foreigners didn't want to come here. They were afraid of getting deported and thrown into ICE jail and everything else, John. I can see that excuse happening right now.
Yeah, you're welcome here as long as you don't act a fool.
Well,
we got enough of those here ourselves. So. I think most foreigners are a little more on behavior than native born here.
I would agree, especially when these are high-end people spending a lot of money, right? This is not like the bottom of the barrel. You're going to get, theoretically, the cream of the crop from these countries who can afford to make the trip. These are not people who have any fear of being arrested by ICE. But if we don't meet these expectations, my fear is that excuse starts getting built into the equation here.
Sure. Well, and comparing notes here, I think the World Cup will do a little better. This club tournament, see, the average Mancunian doesn't follow Manchester City over here, if you will. Or the Inter Miami fan might travel to Cincinnati, but there's different clubs. This is clubs, and it's not country. Country has a broader appeal.
I'll take your word for it because while you were watching soccer over the weekend, I was watching the Rocket Mortgage Classic golf tournament out of Detroit. Fair enough. And let's not forget, Channel 41, KSHB, had a report over the weekend. Kansas City, Missouri hopes to fill vacant storefronts ahead of the World Cup. Kansas City is taking action to address vacant storefronts before the World Cup arrives, committing $1.4 million to help small businesses move into the empty retail spaces. They have a quote here from Nia Webster. She is the assistant director of Kansas City for Missouri's neighborhood department. She says here it's a two-way street. We're exposing small businesses to available properties. We're exposing business owners to property owners to small businesses that could potentially be in their spaces. Don't you love it? The government's just bringing everybody together. No one knows how to find buyers and sellers and potential tenants like the government when they hand out free money. Oh, they're so good at it. Jonathan Garvey, the founder of Pancho's Blanket, believes his Mexican-influenced products could resonate with World Cup visitors. He said here to Channel 41, it creates that cool diversity that Kansas City is. It's a really diverse city at the end of the day, but people coming here are going to be thinking, oh, barbecue and beer. What am I going to find in Kansas City? But they're actually going to find a lot more really interesting, diverse things. Now, Garvey says here he envisions his business potentially on Main Street or Southwest Boulevard. That's great. I am pulling for him. I want his business to succeed. But this notion that the government is going to fund his rent for a couple of months during the World Cup is a nice thought. After that, he's on his own. And then what happens? Right? Then what does that look like? And frankly, is that the job of Kansas City? Is that the job of the taxpayer in Kansas City at a time when everyone's getting squeezed to be funding basically fake storefronts for businesses in Kansas City during the World Cup to make things maybe, shall we say, look a little more vibrant than they might be right now? I told you on Friday I was driving through downtown. There was a big accident right before Front Street as you're crossing over the Kit Bond Bridge. So I got off. I drove through my old stomping grounds just east of where I was. 6th and Broadway is where we lived for about a year when we got to town. And, you know, you're right over from River Market, and they're doing all these new builds out in River Market, all these new, shoebox apartment complexes. And I'm like, man, on the other side of River Market, you've got these big, beautiful, old brick buildings. And so many of them are just empty, boarded up. And frankly, the buildings themselves are way better than the new junk they're building in River Market. But nobody wants to do anything with it. It's like our priorities seem so out of whack on how they're going about trying to build up places like downtown. And I just don't understand it.
I worked at the city market in the summer of 75, 76, right just a block south of the market on Main Street. And this street, Missouri, curves around. There has been a building standing there that has been vacant since 1975. And I'm always amazed that it hasn't fallen down. It's a great building, but it's like, why is no? It's been that long.
That may have been
like
a
50
building.
years now.
I may have driven
Yeah.
right by it, John.
Yeah,
I
it's
literally.
right on the corner.
Yeah.
When you go south of the market, you have to make a roundabout because of the wall there, because of the highway coming through the interstate, and you head back to the east a little bit. Yeah, right there.
Is it
It's
on the
about 3
south
stories.
southwest corner?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
That's one of the ones I'm thinking of.
Vacant since 1975 at least, and
At
probably
least.
20 years before that.
Oh man. Hey, maybe the city will kick in some of that 1.4 mil to put somebody in the building for a hot minute during the World Cup. That's unbelievable. Coming up, we will get to the 6 at 6. Top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. Right here on KCMO. Bill O'Reilly joins the show at 8. Don't miss it. All right, as you are getting your Monday going, I'm thinking, actually, I had this thought this morning. I'm thinking that you might be thinking about that bathroom upgrade, right? So if you are having that conversation with yourself, hopping out of the shower, listening to KCMO on your Alexa or your Google Home or right on the KCMO Talk Radio app, just know that my friends at The Plumbing Pro are offering up $2,000 off on your bathroom upgrade and 12 months same as cash when you tell them you want to take advantage of Pete's deal. That's right, Pete's deal. $2,000 off, 12 months, same as cash with the guys right here in Kansas City at The Plumbing Pro. Now, a lot of these local plumbing guys, God bless them, but they've sold out. And that's their prerogative. It's America. There's nothing wrong with that. But just know that The Plumbing Pro, local guys right here in Kansas City, going back almost 50 years to when Steve started the business on a $2,800 bid right here in Kansas City in 1978. And nearly 50 years later, they are still providing the best quality plumbing services at a reasonable cost and updating your bathroom. And right now, you can't beat Pete's deal. $2,000 off, 12 months, same as cash. Go to the website, theplumbingpro.com, theplumbingpro.com.
It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
6:51 on a Monday. It's great to have you here on KCMO 95.7 FM, and we are always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. It's that time of the morning.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Well, let's go to Idaho. And this was a lead story yesterday. A gunman deliberately started a wildfire in a rugged mountain area of Idaho and then shot at the firefighters who responded, killing 2 and injuring another yesterday afternoon in what local sheriffs described as a total ambush. Law enforcement officers exchanged fire with the gunman while the wildfire burned. And officials later found the body of the male suspect on the mountain with a firearm nearby, according to area sheriffs. The authorities said they believe the suspect had acted alone, but did not release any information about his identity or his motives at this time. So that story was breaking yesterday afternoon, and we'll continue to update you on that if we get more information throughout the morning here on KCMO Talk Radio.
Number 2.
Next up, the big, beautiful bill update. Well, the Senate is set to get back to work this morning in about an hour. They will convene for a lengthy vote-a-rama, as it's being dubbed, where lawmakers can offer an unlimited number of amendments that are related to the massive proposal. They will get to work at 8 o'clock Eastern time, or 9 o'clock Eastern time, 8 o'clock Central time, after a weekend that included Democrats forcing the Senate clerks to read all 940 pages of the bill. Gosh, people are the worst. Reading 940 pages. Yeah. The process took 16 hours and was followed by debate on the bill itself that lasted into Monday morning before the chamber finally recessed. Trump wants this bill on his desk by Independence Day. The House is saying they can probably get to it on their end at the earliest on Wednesday morning. That is, if the Senate does its job today. But this will be obviously the top national political story of the week. And we will follow it for you right here on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Number 3.
Speaking of the big, beautiful bill, Tom Tillis, a U.S. Senator from North Carolina, announced that he is not seeking re-election. And this comes one day after voting against Trump's bill. So this guy is a Republican. He is not and has not been, I guess you would say, a great ally of the President of the United States. And then he got on his bad side when Tillis had expressed concerns about the impact the cuts had to Medicaid, how that would impact his constituents. And Trump then threatened to back a primary challenger. And then Tillis was like, yeah, I'm done. So at 64 years old, he is not going to seek re-election in 2026. This could be a seat the Democrats pick up. North Carolina has become purple-ish. While Trump won it, they do have a Democrat governor in North Carolina. So we'll have to see how that one plays out, John.
Yeah, we used to say, don't go away mad, just go away.
Yeah.
So like that. He's 64, so if we're talking about term limits and things like that, this is the way you should do it.
Yep.
Go on out.
Yep. Head on out. It's all good. We got you. No worries. We'll be okay. We'll be just fine. Next up here in the 6 at 6.
Number 4.
Let's go to KCK. Kansas City Police Department says detectives are investigating a homicide, 2700 block of South 8th Street Terrace in KCK. At about 7:15 last night, officers sent to the area on a reported shooting. When they arrived, they found an adult male outside of a residence with gunshot wounds. The man was pronounced dead at the scene. KCK PD also shared it appears the suspect in the shooting fled in a vehicle before the officers showed up. For KCK, it is their 10th homicide of the year. And, of course, they're asking folks to call the TIPS hotline if they have any information. That's 816-474-TIPS.
Number 5.
In our 6 at 6, a new airport policy is beginning in Kansas City. The Guest Pass program is set to debut at the Kansas City airport. That will allow those not flying to access the other side of the security gate. They announced on Friday that the Guest Pass program will debut this Thursday. So this allows those not traveling to go to the post-security side of the terminal. This will allow folks to meet their family and friends at the arrival gate and also allow them to spend more quality time with the loved ones during departures. It's a nice thought. I think the only reason, by the way, this is happening is because they want to get more business to the restaurants on the other side of the gate. But why you would go pay 50% more than you'd pay somewhere else for the same food to eat in an airport, I don't really understand. But to each their own, and that will debut later this week, John.
When I'm on foreign turf, I look for familiar things. So I don't know if these O&Os work so well. I'm looking for a chain if I'm in Denver going, I don't know if Sharky's Pizza's any good or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. You're right about that. So we'll have to see how that one plays out here on KCMO Talk Radio. And, hey, maybe you want to take advantage of it. That's up to you.
Number 6.
We'll stay at the airport. The Kansas City Barbecue Experience, currently leased by OG Bandits BBQ at the airport, just won a global award as the best casual dining restaurant in the world. Kansas City beat out 2 airports in the U.S. and 11 in other countries for the award to airports across the world of under 20 million passengers per year. So, congratulations on that award for the Kansas City airport and specifically some of the food inside the airport. And now you can go pay a lot of money to go eat there if you want and take advantage of the Guest Pass program. Have some fun with that. There are your top 6 stories here in the 6 o'clock hour. I left the Royals out of it because they're just a mess right now. Sorry, Mark. I just had to do it.
That's all right. Don't eat them.
Coming up, are you offended by billionaires? I'll explain next. It always could be worse, Kansas City. That's something to remember on a Monday morning. It is great to have you here on 95.7 FM KCMO. Bill O'Reilly is 1 hour away. Do not miss that conversation. Make sure you're tuned in and streaming, if you need to by then, at KCMOTalkRadio.com. So one of the lead political stories over the last week or so has been something that doesn't really relate to us here in Kansas City, outside of the fact that it could be worse. But it's gotten a lot of national media attention because a lot of the media is based in New York City. And that is this guy, Mamdani, who is right now the front runner to be the next mayor of obviously the largest city in the country. And the reason he's gotten a lot of attention is because he is a self-described socialist, democratic socialist. That's who he is. Also happens to be an anti-Semite, which is not good for a multitude of reasons I don't need to lay out for this audience, but got a lot of things going against him as far as I'm concerned. So he goes on Meet the Press yesterday, and he said something that I wanted to get your input on. That's a broader conversation as to whether or not billionaires are good or beneficial or we should have them, because this guy, Zoran Mamdani, made it very clear. When it comes to billionaires, he's got no use for them.
You are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer for all of them.
I don't think we should have billionaires, he says. Now, right there, I say to myself, you know how this whole thing is just made up, right? So let me get this straight. If a guy or a gal is worth like $998 million, he's okay. But once you hit that $1 billion mark, no, don't you dare come into this town with $1 billion in net worth. 990 mil, you're in the clear, John.
I'd like to hear the wise guy say he's going to take the job for no money.
Yeah.
Right? Put your money where your mouth is there.
Yeah, that's true. So I think about what this guy just said, who's, once again, the favorite to lead the largest and still, unfortunately, the most influential city in the West. And I think to myself, does he not understand who actually pays his taxes, right? Who actually foots the bill for all the nonsense they have there? It's those same people that he says should not exist. And I would welcome anybody to Kansas. If a billionaire's in New York and wants to come to Kansas City, please come on down. We'd love to have you. Start your business here. All right. Hire a bunch of people. Create great jobs in and around Kansas City. We would gladly take. I'll speak for Mayor Lucas. I'll speak for any other locally elected leaders in this community. You want to come to Kansas City, we'll have you. And you reach out to us at KCMO, and we'll make sure you're not getting screwed when you come here. We'll get you all set up. Don't you worry one bit. When I hear these people say this stuff out loud, I'm like, they have such little understanding of economics, first off. They don't understand how much these billionaires actually fund all of their little programs that they insist that they need to help the little guy. So they're biting off the hand that feeds them, which just right away tells you that they're not all that bright. They don't understand basic economics. And then there's the social attitude of all this as well. As if somehow the money pie in this country is finite. And if somebody has $1 billion, then it means you don't have something or I don't have something. And that's just simply not true in a capitalist society. Now, they don't like that word. They don't like that big, scary C word. But it's proven to be factually inaccurate. That if somebody else has something, it means you don't have something. It's not the case. It's America. You make of this what you want. This great experiment, you make of this what you want. Now, do we have problems? Yeah, we do. Housing is probably problem number one right now when you talk about how difficult it is to become a home buyer. And that's not just in New York. I mean, they've got issues with rent control and things like that, the red tape. But we talk about that stuff here in Kansas City, right? It's not unique to New York. It's not unique to Kansas City. It's a problem all over the country right now. And there's a plethora of reasons for it. But this social attitude of if somebody has $1 billion, I'm somehow getting screwed is something that, frankly, I don't believe most Americans believe. I just don't. But this is a continuing theme that is growing on one side of the political aisle. It's like a tumor that they can't kill. And frankly, they're not interested in killing it. It's like you go to the doctor, he's like, you got stage 4 cancer. It's time for some chemo. You got to get this tumor taken care of as quickly as you can before it spreads. And it's like, nope, I'm good. I'm going to pass. Got to let this baby grow. That's what's happening. Goes back 10, 15 years with Bernie Sanders, and now you've got this guy getting set potentially to be the next mayor of the largest city in the country. So it's not about, I don't want to make it about him because it's not relevant to us here in Kansas City, but just this attitude that is growing of like billionaires are inherently bad people because of what their net worth is. And it's not a world that I think most Americans live in, but if it's the world that one political party wants to dig deep into, be my guest because it'll help the people I frankly prefer to be in office anyway, John.
I found it interesting Cuomo conceded, and it's ranked choice voting that hasn't been completely tabulated.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And Mondani stands to be one of those guys who gets a lot of number ones and a lot of number fives or last. So let's count them and see before we start conceding and saying things, right?
Let's go to Paul in Kansas City. What's up, Paul? You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete, I watched the interview with Mondani yesterday. He also doubled down that he's going to go out to Long Island and Staten Island and tax people because they're white. Can you imagine him going over the Verrazano Bridge on those Italian Americans and tell them we're taking your house? That is not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to be popular, man. It's
No,
not.
sir.
It's not. I mean, I think about some of the billionaires in this country. Here's who they are, right? And you're going to know these names. Regardless of what you think of them personally, leave that aside. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Phil Knight, founder of Nike, the Waltons, all the Walmart folks, Bill Gates, Michael Bloomberg. Once again, these are people, sure, most of them probably lean left, but Elon Musk is obviously in that group. They have all been great for even the average American who just has a 401k. Jensen Huang, who is he? He is the CEO of NVIDIA. Right now, obviously one of the biggest companies on the globe. If you've got $1 invested in your 401k, you should be rooting for NVIDIA. Even if you don't own NVIDIA stock, you own an S&P 500 fund or whatever it might be, you're a fan of NVIDIA. Well, at least you should be. Same thing with the Michael Dells of the world, right? These are all Ken Griffin. These are all people who are, yes, billionaires, but the amount of wealth, not just through their companies that have been brought to the country and brought to everyday Americans, but through their stocks, the wealth that Americans have amassed because of their stocks is exponentially greater than their own individual net worths. And it's like, this is the message that I think so many need to understand and talk about. We're not going to be breaking down that race. It doesn't really matter to us in Kansas City, but that messaging around billionaires are bad. We don't need any of them. They're not good for us. I don't much care. If they're bringing something to the American enterprise and to the capitalistic system, that can be good for the rest of us if we choose to participate in it. 913-408-7957. That's our text line and our studio line on KCMO. Pete, what I want to know is exactly how much of someone else's money do these people think they're entitled to? That's a great question. They can't really say. It's just, hey, billionaires are bad. There's no nuance to the conversation, right? It's just, well, we can't have billionaires. Make sure that net worth stays at $999 million. That makes you an okay person. But you get to that $1 billion mark, well, you better watch out, buddy. It doesn't make any sense to any common sense person. Once you think like an inch below the surface, you realize their argument is completely hollow and is not based in anything other than vibes and feels. Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, I was at an event last night, and the greatest story, the funniest story, one of the funnier stories I've heard about President Trump, I will share with you that I heard firsthand coming up next on KCMO, and Bill O'Reilly will be here at 8:05.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Pete Mundo.
It is what it is, Bill. It's all good, buddy. I got to write down all those phrases, make sure I don't say them to O'Reilly coming up at 8:05. He's got his no-say cliche list there, John.
I missed the one. Instead of asking a question, did he mention the one where you say, talk about your... Did he do talk about?
He did not.
Let's add that one.
Yes, that would be great. I agree with him there. But Bill O'Reilly's morning update every morning at about 7:20, and he is going to be here at 8:05, about a half hour away on KCMO 95.7 FM. So last night, I had the pleasure to MC the Combating Anti-Semitism dinner that took place in the basement of Union Station. And a great event. You had 17 states represented. A lot of folks, obviously, from the Kansas and Missouri side were speakers. You had Ron Segev, a young man who escaped the Hamas terrorist attacks back on October 7th, 2023. Chris Kobach was there as well, Kansas Attorney General. Jim Pillen, he's the governor of Nebraska, spoke last night. So they had a great event. They were all supposed to be in Israel this week, but obviously those plans got upended. So I was emceeing, and Randy Fine was there. Randy is a congressman from Florida. He just won the special election they had down there a couple of months ago. So I knew the name, but I admit I wasn't all that familiar with him. The guy's been there for a hot minute. But he was absolutely hilarious. I mean, this guy could do stand-up comedy if he wanted to. He was really good and really funny. And he told the story about how he ended up in Congress. So he was a Florida state senator before he became a member of the United States Congress here in the last couple of months. He was the guy who replaced Mike Waltz, who Trump named his national security advisor after he won the election last year. So Mike Waltz gets named the national security advisor, and they got to fill his Congress seat, obviously. So this guy, Randy Fine, who's a Florida state senator at the time, gets a call from President Trump. And this was right before Thanksgiving. So Trump had been elected, and this guy, Randy Fine, is a Florida state senator. He's got some prominence. He's a Jewish American, obviously. He's got some prominence down in Florida, and the reason Trump knows him is because Randy Fine had endorsed Trump while in the primary last year in this Florida state Senate race, his opponent was a big DeSantis guy. So naturally, Trump's, a fan of this guy already. And Randy has been a very successful businessman. He's making waves down there in Florida. He's not a career politician or anything like that. He actually ended up getting involved in Florida politics because of the rise in anti-Semitism he was seeing in Florida and around the country. In part, that's why he got involved in politics. He's a young guy. He's got teenage kids, the whole deal. But he's giving back to his country. And he was giving back to his state at the time. So he gets a call from Trump before Thanksgiving, and Trump says, hey, Randy, I need you to do me a solid. I'm thinking about getting you involved here at some level, and I just wanted to feel you out on that. And Randy says, Mr. President, thank you for thinking about me. I'm happy to serve my country however you see fit. I appreciate the call. Whatever you need, you just let me know. And he's thinking it's some kind of an appointment or some type of advisory board or something along those lines. And Trump says, great, thank you, Randy, appreciate the time. And then right before Trump hangs up, he says to this guy, Randy Fine, he says, what do you think about maybe replacing Mike Waltz? I'm going to appoint him to be my national security advisor. And I think you'd be a great U.S. congressman. And he's like, well, Mr. President, I don't even live in the district. He starts hemming and hawing, and I'm not sure that's something that I really want to do, is basically the point he's trying to make to Donald Trump without saying that. This is a guy that's fairly new to Florida politics, never viewed himself as having to go back and forth to D.C., doesn't really want to do it, but Trump put him in a bind. Yeah, sure, Mr. President, whatever you need. How about running for Congress? No. So the phone call ends and, that's how it ended, with Trump saying, you'd be a great fit for Congress to replace Mike Waltz. And Randy Fine hems and haws and moves on with his day. Well, a few days later, he's taking a nap, and he hears his wife screaming his name. He's like, what? What's going on here? Why are my friends telling me you're running for Congress? He's like, I've no idea. He looks at his phone. Trump had put out a Truth Social post saying Randy Fine would make a great U.S. congressman, and we look forward to him replacing Mike Waltz. So he wakes up from a nap on his couch to a post from Trump on Truth Social, basically appointing Randy Fine to be the Republican nominee for the special election in Florida. And the only conversation they had about it was a very brief one where Randy was like, I don't really want to do this. But Trump got his way. That's the most Trumpian story I've heard in a while. But that was hysterical when he was telling it last night. Coming up next, a trend for Gen Z that is driving people nuts.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Well, I gave you a tease right before the break. I'm not going to be able to pay it off because we have a special guest that we just are going to set to. We're going to bring him on here momentarily on KCMO. So I'm not going to dive into this topic right now, but I don't want to leave you hanging. So we'll get to this live into later in the morning. I will just let you know that the tease before the break I gave you was the thing that Gen Zers are doing that are driving people nuts. And we'll get to more with you on this later in the show. But the answer to that tease is they are closing out their bar tab after every drink at the bar. They don't leave the open tab. As a result, that makes it very difficult for bartenders who are trying to do their jobs and serve as many people as possible. And Gen Z apparently is notorious for getting a drink, closing out, getting a drink, closing it out. And it's driving bartenders nuts. There was a big story on Fox News about it over the weekend. But we do have a special guest right now, 7:35 on a Monday morning, as they get set for the Vote-A-Rama, as it's being dubbed, coming up here in the U.S. Senate, trying to get the big, beautiful bill across the finish line here before Independence Day to get it to the president's desk, which is what his goal has been for the last several weeks. Roger Marshall, Kansas U.S. Senator in D.C., joining us on KCMO. Senator, great to have you here. What's going on right now as you get set to go back into the chambers this morning?
Pete, good morning, and I promise if we go out and have a drink together that I won't close the bar tab until we each have 2 or 3 beers. Okay?
I'm good with that. And I'm glad you're paying as well. I appreciate that.
Oh, no, did I just say I was going to pay as well? So, okay, you got me on that one. It's now public, but we need to do that before or after a Chiefs game sometime soon, but really up here. So we're going to start Vote-A-Rama here in 25 minutes. And this is a situation, one of the few times that literally any senator can offer any amendment. There's no potential end to this. You don't end until everyone's tired and exhausted. Typically, it's an all-nighter. I'm surprised we let them off the hook. They kind of finished their 10 hours of debate, I don't know, at 2 or 3 a.m. I don't know why we let everyone go home and sleep, but we're here, and we're going to debate this all day. You know, Pete, interestingly, the Democrats are all of a sudden interested in the national debt. They're concerned that we're adding to the national debt. I'm so shocked that they're interested, but in reality, this bill is going to grow the economy, the start of a golden age. We're going to secure the border. We're going to drive down taxes. This will be the biggest tax cut in American history. The average person, the average middle income person out there listening to your show today is going to keep $1,000 a month more of their hard-earned income when this is all said and done.
Now, is that $1,000 when you factor in the extension of the 2017 tax cuts?
Yeah, exactly. So if we don't pass this bill, we retrovert to pre-2017, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if we don't pass this bill, it's going to cost you $1,000 a month more potentially. But between the tax cuts and what we think and President Trump thinks is going to grow the economy, whether it was John F. Kennedy or Ronald Reagan or Trump 45, when we cut taxes, the economy grows. Imagine that. So people tend to reinvest back into their businesses. So there's something I really led the charge on. It's called a pass-through entity tax. And this was for accountants and dentists and pharmacists and optometrists and doctors, almost any professional entity that we were going to pay an extra tax that we were able to fix. And those people will reinvest back into their business is what I'm trying to say. It is if we give you a tax break on research and development or on interest, on capital, bonus depreciation, you and your company are going to go invest in more equipment to make your show better and grow your business. That's the whole premise of this.
Roger Marshall's on KCMO Talk Radio. So right now, one thing I saw over the weekend is it took I think it was 16 hours to read the 940-page bill. The Democrats basically forced you to do that. Frankly, I'm okay with everyone reading the bill first before people vote on it. I don't mind that, but I do find it a bit hypocritical when the same leaders who said you got to pass the bill to see what's in it suddenly want to read the bill. So how are we to interpret that?
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to reassure your listeners that this is probably the 10th version of this bill that I've read, and our staff has been intimately involved. I'm on the Finance Committee, the Budget Committee, the Health Committee, and the Ag Committee, and that's probably 90% of the action. So we have read each one of these. Think of it as a term paper that you keep redoing and keep updating on the 10th draft of it. So we have read all of it. Matter of fact, we were involved in writing most of it. So it's kind of a little bit of a nuance, but I just want your listeners to know that I have read this bill and we helped write the bill, and I'm proud of it. That this is going to be, if you supported President Trump, you should support this bill. This is his agenda. This is the financing for his agenda. He ran on securing the border. This bill is going to not only build 2,000 miles of wall, but it's going to give funding for extra ICE agents, the removal agents, for 4 years, and it's going to add funding for the Border Patrol officers as well for 4 years. So the Democrats each year, whenever we ask for money, they want a pound of flesh. So we're going to take care of it for the next 4 years and fulfill President Trump's pledge.
Did you just say 2,000 miles of wall? Did I hear that right?
Yes, sir. It is. And let me go into more detail. So it's 2,000 miles of barrier. Let me just say it even more clearly. So I think it's 900 miles of the traditional Trump wall. There's another 900 miles of pedestrian barrier, and that's not quite as intimidating. And then another 400 or 500 miles of however long the river is. You've seen that barrier that they put out in the river. I'm sure you've seen those as well. So it's 3 layers of barrier. Only about 800 of it is the Trump wall, as you and I think of it.
So are these walls behind walls? Because the whole border is like 2,000 miles, right? So are there like double walls going on here? Because there are already some walls down there.
Yeah, you got it. So maybe let's just say there's 800 miles of Trump wall up. There's about 800 miles more to put that up. And then there'll be places where you cannot put that wall. It's just the type of terrain, and they call it a pedestrian wall. I was just down in Arizona. I guess it's been a month ago, and they were explaining to me and showing me is it just meant to slow people down so the Border Patrol is able to go catch them. We're at a record low for the number of crossings right now, but this pedestrian wall would slow down a lot of people as well. So they've had this well thought out. It's $150 billion, Pete, all together, $150 billion to secure the border for the next 4 years. But these walls will be up there forever. Lots of technology. And by the way, our soldiers in Fort Riley are just doing an incredible job down there helping out too.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Roger Marshall's here on KCMO. So you're heading back in about 20 minutes. You will all in the Senate get back to debating this, as it's been dubbed, one big, beautiful bill. It's got to, as I understand it, right, go back to the House, and they say they would need it by Wednesday morning to get it to the president by Independence Day. What is the likelihood that happens?
Well, Pete, we're on Trump time now. If Trump wasn't president, I would say there's no way in heck we would get it done. But he is just such a motivator and so persuasive. As I say, he's the greatest political closer that we've ever had. Thank Goose Gossage and Mario Rivera. Thank Dan Quisenberry for us Royals fans and the Mad Hungarian. He's just a great closer and able to come in, and he got Ron Johnson to flip at the last second on our side and Rick Scott to go forward as well. So everyone has a big talk right now, but when the big guy calls you and he says, now listen, why are you grandstanding? What's going on? What do you need to make this happen? I think he does. I can just, the president, he's a third Barnum and Bailey, July the 4th. I can see him up there on the White House lawn overlooking the Rose Garden, the military band's playing, and he's signing the most consequential bill in our history that's going to start a new golden era. You can quote me on that. He's going to say this is the start of a new golden era for America.
Yeah, maybe, Lee Greenwood on the patio there at the White House doing his little deal as well, right? I could see that right now.
You got it. That's it.
All right, Senator, we'll let you get to work. Thank you for checking in with us on short notice here right before you head back into the Senate chambers, and we'll be following along. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, you bet. If anyone knows where we can find an extra pitcher for the Royals, let me know. We need to get them back going on the right track. So thanks for having me.
Yep. Hey, training camp's right around the corner. I'll just say that much.
Okay. Okay, Pete.
Thank you, Senator. Bye-bye. There you go. Roger Marshall. Always good to have him on KCMO. I guess it's still baseball season, but Mark's got all his KU gear. You fired up for KU football, Mark? What's going on? You done with the Royals?
Yeah, KU football, KU basketball got a couple of recruits last week. So.
I know. They had a good week. You're right about that. Don't count out Bill Self just yet. Not just yet. I see that football stadium's coming along nicely, too.
Yeah, very nice.
Saw some nice pictures from some drone shots over the weekend. Memorial Stadium's looking good. Looking good. All right, coming up, the good, the bad, and the ugly from the weekend. And then it's Bill O'Reilly at 8:05 right here on KCMO Talk Radio. And stream us all morning long on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM.
7:50. We are 15 minutes away from Bill O'Reilly being here on KCMO. Another busy start to the news week, but it is that time of the morning. Let's do it.
It's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly on KCMO Talk Radio. Now on 95.7 FM.
Let's start with the good. Last night, I had the pleasure of emceeing a great event here in Kansas City that was in the basement of Union Station. I had never been down to that Bank of America gallery that they have down there for an event, and it was an event that was put on by Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, CAM, as it's dubbed, and it involved a heavy Kansas, Missouri presence, but there were representatives from 17 different states in attendance last night. You had governors, you had U.S. Congress members, and you had the closer of the night, an incredibly powerful speaker. Ron Segev spoke to this audience of about 125 people about his experience escaping the Hamas terrorist attacks of October 7, 2023 in Israel. And he's 39 years old, and he came within inches of losing his life multiple times that day, and he somehow escaped. And I was emceeing last night. I was happy to do it. These folks were all supposed to be in Israel this week, but for obvious reasons, they had to cancel that trip. So instead, they elected to do this big event last night in Kansas City, and it was powerful. It was an important reminder of the growing anti-Semitism that is on display on college campuses, in major American cities, across social media, and in so many other places right now, not just in America, but around the world. And this organization began back in 2019, and I can't imagine they would have ever predicted where we would have found ourselves today back in 2019. But here we are. And, it was largely a Republican crowd, but I don't think that's because of anything special Republicans are doing on this topic. They're just doing what everybody should be doing, and that is calling out the rabid anti-Semitism for what it is. But it sadly has become a tumor in one of our major American political parties, and it's killing them one day at a time. Figuratively speaking, of course, it's killing them politically one day at a time. They just can't get up and stand up to it in too many cases. I mean, this guy Mamdani in New York is just one example of that. The guy has clear anti-Semitic beliefs. And instead, what you saw last week for this guy, who's the favorite to be the next mayor of New York City, is a lot of the most powerful people on his side of the political aisle congratulating him. Not admonishing him, but congratulating him. So we're glad to have these people in Kansas City here this week. And last night was a really special kickoff event at Union Station. Now, the bad from the weekend was a reminder I saw here on Channel 41. Woke 41 did this story reminding us about something we talked about a few weeks ago when the story first came out. And that is that Kansas City is taking action to address vacant storefronts before the FIFA World Cup comes next summer, committing $1.4 million to help small businesses move into empty retail spaces. So basically, Kansas City is going to pay businesses who otherwise can't afford to open up a storefront to temporarily open up a storefront next summer to make it look like there is a more robust downtown business community than there is while people are visiting for the World Cup. It's all smoke and mirrors, baby. That's the name of the game. And you look at some of the quotes in this piece from Channel 41, Nia Webster, who is an assistant director in Kansas City, she says, "We're exposing small businesses to available properties." Boy, that's one way to sell it. Exposing small businesses to available properties. Are you kidding me? No, you're using taxpayer monies to pay for the rent of businesses that otherwise can't afford to pay for rent in Kansas City, because if they could, they would have a storefront themselves. Like, that's how the free market works. If they can't afford it right now, you're basically subsidizing their rent to make Kansas City look a little better during the World Cup. and I guess hope that they get some major business lift during those few weeks of the World Cup, and then hopefully they can pay their own way going forward. I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, that sounds great. And there's a perfect world, and then there's reality. Then there's the real world. And while it's not a big chunk of money, I mean, $1.4 million is not, sad to say, a lot of money. But still, based on all the things going on right now in this town, is that really the play? Is that the thing that we need to be doing and spending money on? Making Kansas City look better with taxpayer monies for businesses to open up empty storefronts that otherwise have nothing going on right now, for this potential that they may be able to stay there long term? What are we doing? And then the ugly from the weekend will go to where 2 firefighters were killed in a sniper ambush. So a gunman deliberately started a wildfire in a rugged mountain area of Idaho and then shot at the firefighters who responded, killing 2 and injuring another yesterday afternoon in what a local sheriff described as a total ambush. This reading from the New York Times. Law enforcement officers exchanged fire with the gunman while the wildfire burned, and officials later found the body of the male suspect on the mountain with a firearm nearby, according to the local sheriff who held a news conference last night. The authorities said they believed the suspect had acted alone, but at the time did not release any information about his identity or the motives. So that was a big breaking news story nationally yesterday. And as we get more information on it, we will keep you posted here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And we are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app, and you want to make sure that you are streaming our conversation coming up just after the top of the hour news. That is when Bill O'Reilly is going to be here to talk about what has been a historic week plus for this administration and everything that's to come in what will be a busy news week ahead. Bill O'Reilly next on KCMO. Bill O'Reilly, always great to get him on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. So much to dive into as always. And you can find him at BillO'Reilly.com. The YouTube channel is exploding. The subscription is still well worth your time on the website. And he's got a new book coming out as well, Confronting Evil. That comes out in September. But I've never been really, nervous to talk to Bill. But after his morning update, I've got to avoid the cliches. So, Bill, good morning. It is what it is. I'll make it through the conversation. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you can't use cliches, Mundo. Okay?
Oh, that's great.
But there's a more serious thing than just petty annoyances here. And people who say the same things over and over and over again, and that is pretty much every cable news person, okay, are lazy thinkers. They're not formulating precise points of view. They're falling back on us. Well, what do you make of that? How many times have you heard one of these cable people go to a guest? What do you make of that? What's your question, lady? What's your question, bud? What do I make of, what do you want me? Take the whole thing? The whole Constitution? What do I make of it? I like it. It's good. And that is laziness.
Mm-hmm.
It's also an indicator that the interviewer doesn't know what he or she is talking about. Because when you don't know, then you can formulate a general question using a cliche like, well, we'll have to wait and see. Thanks. That's great. So I just gave you 15 minutes of my life, and the key is I have to wait and see. Why don't you tell me that up in front so I wouldn't waste my time?
Oh, that is so true. And that's why you're having great success at BillO'Reilly.com. Bill, let me just start here with the last 10 days for President Trump. The strikes on Iran conducted by the men and women down here at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, the foreign policy successes, the Supreme Court wins late last week, the stock market hitting record highs. Just stepping back, was last week the best week that Trump has had during his time as president from 1.0 or 2.0? Is that a fair characterization?
I don't know about that. I think in his first term, many of Trump's policies, they weren't immediate policies, but they were well grounded, particularly in the inflation area, and of course the tax cuts. So to say that last week was his best week, I don't know if I want to get into that kind of evaluation. But in 2017, Trump cut taxes and got Congress to okay it until now, and that's what that big bill is about. They want to extend it forever, which is not really true because the next Congress come in and knock it right out. But last week, what Trump accomplished was that in the short term, he shut the mullahs down, shut them up, and the stock market, for whatever reason, and I'm not a financial guy, is going up exponentially, so that looks good for him. But I think longer term, all of these things are going to have to play out, particularly the tariffs. And then you're going to have to go into Putin, which is unbelievable. And I'm going to do my YouTube commentary. And we want everybody, the YouTube channel for Bill O'Reilly is free. It's youtube.com/Bill O'Reilly. And I do different things there than I do on the No Spin News. But I'm going to analyze why Trump has not persuaded Putin to be a human being. And a lot of it's in my book, Confronting the President, Confronting Evil, which comes out September 9th. But we're going to do that tonight. But anyway, Trump had a good week. I worry about some of his people becoming arrogant. I've seen it. They're getting a little bit too taken with themselves. That's not good. So that's where we are.
So is it up to the president to keep those who might be getting big-headed in line, or is there something else that needs to happen on that front to not have bad things come out of it?
I've seen it in every single administration. So as you know, I interviewed 5 presidents. I mean, I go all the way back to Gerald Ford. And I never met Nixon. I never met Reagan. Those are the 2 guys that I did not meet. But I've seen it as a historian almost every administration that once these people get a taste of power and some success, got to be fair, then they really start to strut around. And that's not good. This is like being an overconfident sports team.
Mm-hmm.
I am sensing some of that coming out of the Trump administration.
What would you advise President Trump to do to make sure that doesn't get worse?
There's nothing he can do because he has so much to do directly with running the country. He can't supervise all the departments.
Mm-hmm.
No human being could. And that's why some of these people, not all of them, but some of them, get out of control. They aren't being held to account. As long as they do their jobs, as long as they're not causing Trump any problems, he's not looking into how they're behaving. I mean, it's a good word. Some of them are misbehaving, but not at a level that would draw his attention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the exception to that was Musk. That's the best example I can give you.
Mm-hmm.
So Musk was hired to run Doge to cut out government waste, and then all of a sudden he's telling Trump what should be in the budget bill.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit, wait a minute, I hired you to be the third base coach, not to make out the lineup.
Yeah, you did see that with Elon. So is this stuff, last thing on that point, is this stuff that you're seeing, in public that other Americans may pick up on, or is this stuff you're noticing behind the scenes privately?
Privately.
Okay. Gotcha.
Although there have been, some foolish statements, but I deal with these people, as you know,
mm-hmm.
All the time. And I dealt with I didn't deal with the Biden people so much because that was just a hopeless situation.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't get in touch with anybody there. But I dealt with Obama a lot. And there was a point in the Obama administration after they passed Obamacare that they got out of control. And Trump's people aren't there yet, but I'm seeing a little bit of that stuff, and they ought to tamp it down. I may have to go public on it if it gets worse.
Mm. Bill O'Reilly, he's on KCMO. Always great here. So, Bill, this big, beautiful bill that's obviously going to be the topic of this week in Congress, the president wants to sign it by Independence Day. Is this a deadline that he should really be holding to, or is this something, in your estimation, he should back off of and make sure Congress does it right?
Congress will never do anything right.
Fair point.
If you're hoping they're going to do something right, you're going to be waiting for a long time. So if I'm Trump, I want to sign this tonight. I want to get it done. And the reason is the bill is all over the place. I mean, it's thousands of pages long. But the tax cuts are the key to the American economy. You cannot tax people anymore. You can't. And the Democratic Party does want to. And the other stuff you can adjust to. The Medicaid supervision, the SNAP stuff, all the free stuff, that can be adjusted. The tax cuts can't. That goes down in flames. The economy goes down in flames. So if I'm Trump, you got to get that thing done. And he's, behind the scenes, he is bringing unbelievable pressure. And he'll get it done because the Senate was the big holdup, and they passed it 51-49 over the weekend. And Rand Paul's hopeless, so you're never going to convince him. Okay? Tillis is, they knocked him out of the box in North Carolina. Boy, oh boy. And, he deserves it. And you know who's going to take that seat?
Who?
His seat in 26? Lara Trump.
Oh, okay. Really? So she's been rumored, but you think that this is finally a go time for her?
You're hearing it first on the Pete Mundo program. She's a lock.
Wow.
And she'll win.
You know, I've heard that she's got her own show now on the weekends there at Fox, and she's always been known to be one of the better communicators when it comes to a surrogate for the family and the administration. Do you believe that?
Very articulate. You know, it's not going to give you a lot of nuance. It's going to be straight party line. But if you like the party, she is a very, very articulate woman.
All right. There you go. The Supreme Court decisions on Friday, Bill, a lot of big wins for the president there. Is there one of those that stands out to you above the rest that will have the biggest impact on the American people going forward?
Well, I predict this would happen. You can't have judges in Seattle shutting down presidential executive orders. It doesn't matter what party it is, because then you have chaos and anarchy. Can't govern. So that wasn't a tough call in the Supreme Court the way it's aligned now. Wasn't surprised. The birthright citizenship thing, Trump's going to lose that. So everybody's jumping up and down now in the White House saying, oh, you know, we got some wins, and it's true. But they're not going to knock out the birthright citizenship. What they'll do is they'll tighten it up a little bit. There may be, if you're here illegally and you give birth, then you're subject to review rather than automatic. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if you stuck in here just to give birth, which some women do, then a federal court oversight could disqualify you. I think that's how it's going to come down. But Trump's not going to be able to knock out a constitutional provision by executive order. I don't believe that he's going to win that.
So, Bill, as we head through the summer here, I got my copy, my advanced reader copy of Confronting Evil. I'm excited to go through that this summer here. But I'll tell you what, with the guys on the cover of that book, Bill, you are going to knock this thing out of the park. I mean, you couldn't have timed this better with where the world is at right now, huh?
So lucky. Somebody's looking out for that book.
Yes.
Because when we wrote the book and I designed the cover, as I always do for my books, you know, I threw on Hitler, everybody knows, Mao Zedong, and then I got to contemporize it. I can't just do that because a lot of those are well worn, although we came up with stuff that about all of these guys. And they're all guys. I wanted to get a woman in there. I couldn't find a woman who reached the level of evil as these 14 guys that we talk about. Anyway, so I threw Putin and the Ayatollah on there just to contemporize it. And now they are in the forefront of the news. So you're right. This will catch people's attention. It's a good book. I mean, and it's a book that you'll learn something on every page that you didn't know. You thought you knew everything about these heinous people. And then we get into cultures, entire cultures, like the Roman Empire and Genghis Khan. Nobody knows about Genghis Khan. He's the worst mass murderer in history.
Wow.
By far. Nobody knows anything about him.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
And what he did influenced Europe and Asia, and how he did it is just harrowing.
Wow. I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, and I'm specializing in evil now. I don't know how that happened, but life is. When I was over in China, I got a good look at what Mao Zedong laid down, because that police state, boy, that is as intense. Every person on this earth should understand what's going on in China.
That's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, it's always great to have you here. And listen, I know you're not a New York City resident, but with that being your hometown, if that crazy guy Mamdani wins, just know you got a home here in Kansas City if you got to finally pull the trigger and leave. I know you're not going anywhere, but if you're thinking twice with that guy Mamdani, just know Kansas City's got a spot for you.
Well, that's very nice of you, and I like KC. I'm 8 miles away from Armageddon.
Yeah.
My house is 8 miles away from the New York City border. And Nassau County, where you're from, is the safest county in the country crime-wise. And you cross that line into New York City, it's like that movie Escape from New York, Snake Plissken. That's what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
The social disorder is unbelievable. And it shows you because Nassau County is a conservative-run county. New York City is a liberal-run concern. And you can just see it with your own eyes, the absolute chaos. And this Mamdani, if he is elected, that'll be the collapse. The city will collapse because all the big corporations, not all of them, but many of them will move out.
Definitely a story to watch. Bill, we always appreciate the time. The YouTube channel, search it there. Just look up Bill O'Reilly. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, BillO'Reilly.com. Still well worth your time as well. And Confronting Evil coming out in September. Bill, have a great week. We appreciate the time as always, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, have a good summer, Mundo. Thanks for having me on.
You as well. Bill O'Reilly on KCMO Talk Radio. Great to have him here as always. All right, 913-408-7957. That's how you join us on a Monday morning on KCMO. We'll get to we still got a lot to dive into here this morning, and we will get to this. Will anybody be hanging out in a certain part of Kansas City after a new plan gets set to go into place this week? We'll tell you about that after the news at the bottom of the hour on KCMO.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
Well, the debate is now going on the Senate floor, the vote-a-rama, as it's being called. Bill O'Reilly was outstanding. If you missed that conversation, it will be up on the podcast after the show, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Search KCMO, search Pete Mundo. You'll find it there. Subscribe to the Pete Keatsman podcast as well while you're at it. But Bill was outstanding. So now we sit here and we wait to see what happens in the Senate. Now, Bill wants to see it done this week. Of course, it will have to go back to the House. The House says it can take it up as early as Wednesday morning. And if they get all this nonsense done today in the Senate, they will get it to the House. And then, of course, they will get it to President Trump's desk. And he wants to sign this thing on or before Independence Day, which is coming up on Friday. So that is what this week's, at least, political news cycle is going to be highlighted by. And we'll be watching it every step of the way here on KCMO. Now, coming up, I just have a question for you. Do you have any interest in spending your time, more time than you have to, in an airport? And I'll ask you that and open up the phones to you because of a new policy that is starting this week in Kansas City. We have those details next on 95.7 FM.
from the nation's heartland. It's Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
You going to go? 8:34, good morning. Great to have you here on KCMO. Kansas City announcing that it will launch its guest pass program at the airport starting this Thursday, July 3rd. So this is something that we've talked about, and it's been a long time. But we've touched on the idea. I think it first came up maybe a year or so ago.
Seems
right?
like, yeah.
After the new airport got opened up. And now it's finally going to happen. So this will be an opportunity for you to apply for a guest pass 1 to 7 days ahead of time, to go to the other side of TSA, go into the gating area at the new airport, whether it's to help children, whether it's to help elderly, or whether it's just to shop and hang out and spend money and do all that stuff to boost the Kansas City airport economy. You're now going to be able to do that starting on Thursday. Now, I don't know what Kansas City's expectations are. The mayor will be on the show coming up on Thursday. I'll ask him what the goal is here. I'm sure they have some big rosy estimate. There'll be 17,000 people every 6 weeks. I don't know. I'm just making up a number here. But they'll have some big rosy number they'll throw out there on how many people they expect will take advantage of this. But I'm just genuinely curious if you would ever do this. I can't imagine wanting to spend more time in an airport than I have to, unless the only situations I could think of is if I had an elderly parent, which, I do not have right now, thank goodness, that needed some help getting through security and wanting to take them to the gate and the whole deal, right? That I could see. Maybe you got kids who are flying as well for the first time by themselves. You want to help them get to their gate and do what they're doing, and maybe you want to take advantage of that. But that is not something that I think most people are going to be interested in doing, and that doesn't apply to most people. So what's the purpose here? I can't help but think a large part of this is about also boosting some of the businesses on the other side of TSA. Now, I don't blame them for trying to do this because the reality is this: Kansas City is not a hub, right? There's not a lot of flights that are coming here that then people are dropped off. They're waiting for a connecting flight. It's just not what this airport is. I wish it was different. I wish we were a hub. It's like when I flew to visit my brother in Boston back in May. I flew in and out of St. Louis both times, and that airport's a dump compared to our airport. Our airport's way nicer. We should be doing far more hub travel than what St. Louis gets. I mean, there was slim pickings on the eatings. It's run down. It's worn down. We should be more of a hub than St. Louis. We're never going to be, Dallas or Atlanta or Charlotte or some of those big hubs, but we should be more of a hub than St. Louis, as far as I can tell. And that's really when those restaurants do well. They do well when you get people who are in layovers, right, at airports. That's when they're going to spend money. They got to eat. They might buy something. They got a couple hours to kill, whatever it might be. That's not what Kansas City is, especially us. Like, we're all trying to get there as late as we can to spend as little time in the airport as possible. You do that, I do that. That's the goal. And sometimes I've cut it a little close. Once or twice I've cut it a little close, especially when I got 3 little kids I got to drag with me to the airport. That always makes for a fun time. And then you find out, oh, you're gate B42, which is like the back right corner of the new airport. Anytime I travel alone, Kate and I have joked about this. We've each traveled alone like a couple of times in the last year or two. And we always end up with one of the A gates, like A6, which is right on the other side of TSA. And then when we're going with the kids, it's like go to B42 in the back right of the airport. Why does it always happen that way? I don't know, but it seems like it always does. So now I'm just sitting here looking at this guest pass program and saying, is this something that people are really going to take advantage of? And I don't see it happening. Not that I don't want it to. I'm not trying to rag on anybody or the city or the airport. I just don't know if this business is going to be booming like they expect it to boom, John. I don't see it happening for Kansas City. As much as I would love for that to happen, I don't think it's going to happen, man.
Yeah, I don't know. Not sure what the goal is, other than to shut up the FOMA people who've probably been pestering him since the airport opened about why can't we come in there. Well, but I mean, if you're taking grandma to the airport, and it's more for the people where maybe you got the oldest one going to college, so you might go up an hour early with their whole family, or you might come and wait for grandma to come in. You do it once.
Yeah.
Maybe twice, if it's around the holiday. But to your point, I'm thinking, well, at least people wouldn't be out in the drop-off and the pickup lanes. I would go into the garage then and park and maybe pay for a couple hours and get out of the way of that traffic flow at least. So that might be a help, but I don't see the numbers being significant enough to improve that.
I don't think so
Especially
either.
on pickup when you want to get the heck out of Dodge.
Exactly. You want to get in, you want to get out. On the text line, Pete, how much is the guest pass? It is free. It's totally free. So there's 3 steps here. You got to complete your application 1 to 7 days prior to visiting. That's a big gap, 1 to 7 days prior to visiting. What is this, booking a tea time at your local muni? I mean, this takes a little bit.
Well, it's Jackson County.
Yeah, that's true. Well, see, would it be Clay or would it be Platt up there? Who would be in charge of that?
I'm being facetious. Obviously, yeah, it's not in Jackson County, but somehow your order may have to go through there.
Yeah, Frank White's special assistant to the assistant.
Listen, if you've ever tracked your mail, you can understand.
Step 2, receive your digital guest pass. Once you have submitted your application, you'll receive an email confirmation if approved. The digital guest pass is on your device. So that's going to turn people off. I need a hard copy of this thing.
Yeah.
Along with your government-issued real ID or passport. That'll be required at the security checkpoint. Step 3, go through security screening at your scheduled time. Arrive at the security checkpoint inside the terminal as if you are a regular traveler. Now, my prediction here is this is not going to drum up a lot of interest.
No.
That being said, if I am running late and I end up missing a flight because a bunch of goobers want to go eat barbecue in the airport, I'm going to lose my freaking mind. I am going to be so fed up if I'm standing in line for security. And yes, I have pre-check, but still, sometimes it can take a hot minute. If I am standing in line waiting for security because there are people ahead of me who just want to check out the airport, that will drive regular travelers and business travelers absolutely nuts. Now, the lines aren't bad, but if that ever comes to fruition, I will advocate more than I've ever advocated and lobbied for anything in this town to shut this damn program down the first time I miss a flight because some guy wants to eat barbecue overpriced at the airport, John.
Please plan to arrive at your gate 1 hour ahead of time for Ma and Pa Kettle going through security. Got all the kids.
Oh,
what do
my
you mean
gosh.
we can't bring the dog?
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
I mean, if there are people who are not regular travelers who just want to check out the airport, they don't know the rules. They don't know the lay of the land. That is a mess waiting to happen. On the text line, Pete, I don't want any part of this. It is not the time to potentially relax security and have people in that don't need to fly and be at the airport. Mm-hmm. It's not a destination. It is a means to a destination.
Yep.
That is a great line on the text line. And I totally agree. If it's that special person, if it's the kids, if it's an elderly parent, I'm sympathetic towards. I really am. But here's the thing. This is not the only airport that does this. I was looking at a list of airports that allow non-travelers beyond security to see loved ones depart. It's actually a longer list than I would have expected. San Antonio allows it, Philadelphia, Orlando, Seattle, Tacoma. Were you flying out of there, Mark, or were you Portland?
We were Portland.
Okay. New Orleans, Detroit, Tulsa, John Wayne Airport, that's in Orange
Anaheim,
County.
Yeah.
Palm Springs, Ontario, and the Tri-Cities, that is in Tennessee. So that's about a dozen. So Kansas City is joining that list. Listen, I'm pulling for them here, but I see disaster written all over it, mostly because of the people who are probably going to be in charge of it here.
Can you give me that list again? I'm on a road trip down there.
No.
We're going to Cincy for some Skyline chili. Now you can plan places to eat.
Yeah.
Tulsa, what do they got down there?
New Orleans, you get your Cajun food down there,
right,
John.
yeah.
There you go. Shrimp and grits, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. Oh, my goodness. No, I'm not going to give you that list. Suddenly, John's got a big road trip and vacation plan with the missus to go to different airports around the country.
Maybe Anthony Bourdain or whatever his name is.
No, don't do it, man. Don't do it. I'm begging you, don't do it. Coming up on KCMO, we have another controversy because, God forbid, a white athlete gets attention. We'll tell you who and why next on KCMO.
Stream Mundo in the morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
The race hustlers in sports media just can't help themselves. Good morning. It's 8:49. It is so great to have you here kicking off the new week on KCMO Talk Radio. So last week we told you about how this guy Cooper Flagg out of Duke became the first white American-born player to be the number one pick in the NBA draft since 1977. Now, this is obviously just an interesting note. It's been almost 50 years, right, since a white guy who's from America, not one of these Eastern European dudes, actually goes number one in the NBA draft. Big deal when you think about it. So the reality is sports are a meritocracy. It doesn't say anything about white players or black players. It just so happens that the reality is this year, Cooper Flagg, teams perceived to be the best player available in the NBA draft. But ESPN just can't help itself. They can't help but already start the race hustling game. Here's Peter Rosenberg on ESPN late last week talking about Cooper Flagg going number one and trying to draw a parallel between Cooper Flagg and Caitlin Clark, who we know has been admonished by WNBA players and by many who cover the league for the simple fact that she's popular and she's a white woman. Let's roll.
Good. However, we're all adults. We can have a real life conversation,
Yeah, let's
right?
do it.
Last time I checked, we still live in America,
Yeah.
right?
Last I
Cooper Flagg is a white guy, maybe the best white American prospect since Larry Bird, right? Let's not act as if we don't live in America and we're not seeing what's happening with Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. Cooper Flagg is going to be an instant impact player in the NBA. I think Danny will agree. He is ready to go. That kid could play right now. If he's nearly as good as people expect, I think when it comes to intrigue, actual intrigue that people are talking about day to day, no one's going to be more intriguing, get more eyeballs than what Cooper Flagg's doing in Dallas.
And is that because he is white? There was a weird insinuation there that Cooper Flagg, and that was by Peter Rosenberg, ESPN, a guy actually, I don't know him personally, but I don't know if he still does it, but he hosted a radio show on ESPN radio in New York for a while, and he was the wokest of the woke in sports radio in New York. I know that will not shock you based off of that commentary, but that's just who he was and what he is. And, of course, ESPN gave him a job, right, on the big TV channel. That's what they do. So he makes these comments, and they get traction over the weekend. And I'm sitting here, I'm thinking to myself, a little news flash for a guy like Peter Rosenberg and those that need to hear it. Good athletes are popular regardless of their race. And that is the great thing about sports. It is a meritocracy. No one really cares for the most part. Now, last week, yes, we did talk about Cooper Flagg, first white American born, but it's not like I'm running out. And getting a Cooper Flagg jersey or care more about the NBA because a white guy went first. I don't. I'm not an NBA fan. I was growing up. I'm not anymore. I watched some of the playoffs because a bunch of my Villanova guys are now on the New York Knicks, which I think is cool. But I'm not like, now there's a white guy who might be good in the NBA, so by golly, I'm going to turn it on. Look at that. John, I'm suddenly magically going to do it.
I'm surprised we're not talking about systemic racism here.
Well,
How about that? Because if the story were reversed, right, you know where I'm going.
That's exactly.
Finish my thought.
Exactly what I wanted to get to. The same people who are now saying you can't really appreciate or you can't factor in Cooper Flagg's race, right? The insinuation is, it doesn't matter. Cooper Flagg's a white guy. That may get white people more into the NBA. Well, hold on. You've been telling me for decades that, when we didn't have quarterbacks who were certain skin colors, well, we had to have it because of racial equity and demanded it. And by the way, what do we learn in sports? Now, many of the top quarterbacks are black, which who cares? That's great. But the same people that insisted we had to have more racial equity in certain parts of sports are now saying if you wanted that balanced out, it's the worst thing ever. Once again, I don't care what the race is of the quarterback for the team I root for, the point guard of the team I root for. I don't care. If they win, that's all we care about. But these sports media guys have flipped themselves now on their heads in a way that they don't even realize their own hypocrisy here, John. They have no idea.
I'm waiting for the facetious female reporter take of now a little white 10-year-old or 11-year-old boy can see someone like him out on the court achieving success, right? You know that asinine storyline that happens?
Yes, we get it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And just to be clear, just to show you that sports fans in this country don't care about race, not one bit, I looked up the top 10 selling NBA jerseys and the top 10 selling NFL jerseys from the last year. And when you combine those 10 apiece, you get 20 out. Top 10 in the NBA, top 10 in the NFL. You have a total of 4 of those 20, who happen to be white guys. 4 of 20. So to suggest that white Americans are just desperate for their white hero to show up and help take over the NBA, that's not true. And who are they? Just so you know, Luka Doncic of the Lakers, number 1 in the NBA. And then Jokic in Denver with the Nuggets is number 10 in the NBA jersey sales. In the NFL, you want to take a guess at the 2 white guys who are in the top 10 jersey sales there? One of them should be fairly obvious to you, Mark.
I was gonna say Max Crosby from the Raiders.
Oh, he is actually 10.
Okay.
He is. Sorry, he's 10. Yep. The other one?
Travis.
No. Good
No?
guess.
Not
Good
Travis
guess.
Kelce?
Good guess. No, not Travis Kelce. Come on. Quarterback.
Aaron
AFC.
Rodgers.
AFC. Chiefs versus this team. We beat them all the time in the playoffs. Can't beat them in the regular season.
Burrow.
No.
Josh Allen.
There you go. There you
There's
go.
so many we beat in the playoffs.
All these white guys look alike to me, so I couldn't tell them apart, Pete.
Oh, that's great. Mike's in Olathe. Hey, Mike, you're on KCMO.
John hit my segue perfectly because that's what Kendrick Perkins would say. But then again, that's my point. But these guys, I think they're losing a little bit of their grasp on something they feel like they own, because it was the same thing with Jokic and the MVP award thing. Perkins it's always about the race thing. These guys are just great players. Let's let this kid play. I mean, and great that he's an American, but white guys are dominating a lot in the league. I mean, big guys like you said, Doncic and Jokic, but I think there's a little fear factor of them losing something they felt like they sort of come to own, instead of, if they really wanted to be the people they say they are, they'll embrace this and just say, hey, if it brings more eyes, let's go.
Yep, I'm with you, Mike. Great call, my man. I appreciate you. On the text line, Pete, I was born in 91. I was obsessed with Michael Jordan, Space Jam, and the Bulls. See, that was me. I was born in 88. Same exact thing. Loved Jordan. Loved Space Jam. I've shown it now to my girls. Claire was actually into it. We've watched it now twice in the last year or so. This texter says, I was less than 10. I couldn't care less that MJ was black. I looked up to him. I'm white. I've never been good at basketball in my life. I mean, that was all of us, right? All of us. It's the media that loves to break this thing down by race and insist that we're suddenly waiting for our hero to show up that looks like us. And the first hero I had in sports was Michael Jordan. Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, we've got an hour until Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled takes over. I love my man Tony's Kansas City. Great blog here in town. But he's wrong about maybe the biggest story in Kansas City. I'll tell you next. You know, I love my guy, Tony Bateo of Tony's Kansas City, right? He does a great job with his blog and talking about things happening in Kansas City that are not getting nearly enough media attention. He is a friend of the show, a guest on the show. We have not had him on lately because I like to bring him in on studio on Fridays, and he's dealing with some family medical things that he's taking care of. So anyway, but we still love Tony. However, he wrote something here this morning I got to vehemently disagree with. He says, Royals and Chiefs risk losing authenticity by moving to Kansas suburbs. And he writes here, in our humble opinion, this is the premise of his piece. I'll just read you this big sentence. Moving to the Kansas suburbs is just about the most generic, soulless, and boring thing a person can do. Now, Tony is a KC guy through and through. We all know that. And he goes on to basically note in this piece that it potentially impacts the authenticity of the teams to move from Kansas City, Missouri, over to Kansas. Listen, there are plenty of reasons that I have been very skeptical of either of these teams moving to Kansas. But that part of it, the authenticity of the teams no longer being in Kansas City, Missouri, is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You can look all over this country at teams that do not play in the city of the team, or I guess they don't play in the city that they supposedly represent. It's all over the NFL. It is all over Major League Baseball and, to a lesser extent, the NBA. Nobody cares that the New York Jets and the New York Giants play in New Jersey. Trust me. Those fans don't sit there when they're coming from New York and say, man, this new drive by, you hate this. I can't root for this team anymore. No, they say that because their teams both absolutely stink, and they have for the better part of a decade now. But it's not because they have to go to New Jersey to watch a game. They don't care about that. And as much as I question the Kansas move for both of these teams, it's got nothing to do with the potential authenticity of no longer being in Kansas City, Missouri.
I was a young AFL fan when the Boston Patriots let me down. I'm like, what's this? New England? What? Foxborough.
Foxborough.
I still like the Boston Patriots better. It's a great name, but, so be it.
Yeah, it happens.
The L.A. Rams, the L.A. Chargers, Inglewood.
Yep.
You've got San Francisco 49ers. It's outside of San Francisco.
I'll bet less play in their exact zip code than do, right?
I would say it's a higher percentage than people realize.
Orchard Park.
Yep. The Arlington Cowboys, technically not the Dallas Cowboys. The list goes on and on and on. So I don't think that there's any authenticity that is impacted here. Now, it's funny because on Friday night, we were eating dinner down at 119th and Row. We actually went out for the first time in a long time, and it was nice. And we were driving back up, I guess that would have been Row. And I said to Kate, could you imagine trying to get out of a baseball game here? How awful that would be. You've got like Knoll and Rowe both shut down in both directions.
Hey, let's take the shortcut past Hallbrook. We can just go through Hallbrook, can't we?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Hallbrook, they'll make sure that they've got private security that won't let you through Hallbrook, right? There's not going to be any backdoor cuts to get home through Hallbrook. I promise you that. The NIMBYs will be going strong on that front, not in my backyard. No way, no how. So I'm just like, I'm saying to her, could you imagine trying to get 35, 40,000 people out of a baseball game here, going up Knoll and Row? If the Chiefs are to look at that Asperius Old Spring campus, that remains of all the ideas that have been out there for these teams. Like, I get, as much as I don't really think it makes sense, I totally understand why the Chiefs would look out by the Legends and the Speedway. I get it. I get why the Royals would look at the old Crossroads where they failed miserably on the vote. I somewhat understand Washington Square Park. I understand the Northland. I will never understand the value of the Asperia campus. The only thing that makes sense from an Asperia campus perspective is this belief that if you create a district around there and you can reap some of the benefits of already a growing part of the Kansas City region, and that's what that part of town is, And then suddenly you can use the increase in revenues that are already happening there to help pay off your bonds by saying part of the increase in revenue is because we have a baseball stadium here. Trust me, the Crate and Barrel, our friends at Diamonds Direct at 119th and Row, their businesses are going to grow, but it won't be because there's 81 baseball games a year played a half mile down the road. That will be irrelevant. But if you draw a star bond district that suggests these businesses and their sales tax revenues are increasing, and they're increasing because of our baseball stadium, and you can't prove that the increase in revenues are not because of the baseball stadium or would happen regardless of the baseball stadium, that's the beauty of the would happen regardless. It doesn't really matter. If the revenue is X and now it's X plus, the sales tax on the plus is going to be used to pay off the bonds if they put those businesses in the star bond district. So let's go to a place that's already doing great, that's already growing, put our stadium there, put all this stuff in the star bond district, and then use the increase in revenues and the sales taxes from those increased in revenues to pay off the bonds. Bing, bang, boom. It's an all-time scam. It's great. Life is good. Trust me, most of those business. Now, a restaurant might see an increase in revenue because of a baseball stadium nearby. That is true. But the Trader Joe's,
the Apple Store.
What else is over there? Kate's gotten a massage over there before. There's a good massage place over there that she likes.
Heidi worked there when we were first married.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Front desk person.
Yeah, I've gotten her that for, I think it was a Valentine's Day gift or an anniversary one year. Unless a lot of people are going to the massage parlor after a Royals game because they're just so beyond themselves by how the team can't hit worth a damn that they got to go get a massage after the game. I suppose that's possible. But I'm pretty sure most people are just going to be like, yes, some businesses will do better. Specific businesses will do better if there's a stadium there. Most, it will be irrelevant. The success or failure of that business is not going to be driven by 81 baseball games a year. And then thinking about those neighborhoods, and Kate said to me, she goes, do you think these people know that this could be happening to them? I said, well, if they listen to KCMO, they do. That was my response. I said, I don't know. These are well-to-do people in beautiful neighborhoods. They're not naive to what has been the biggest news story of the last several months in this town, but you never know. I mean, I get it. People are busy. They got lives. They're raising kids. They got, important jobs in a lot of these neighborhoods, not just sitting around watching news all day. I understand that. But, man, I would be barking real loud if I was them. Real loud. 913-4087-957. And I continue to wonder if there will be a city element to a potential stadium in Overland Park. And by that, I mean, we know how generous Overland Park's city council is towards developers, right? We see it playing out right now with their Black and Veatch nonsense, where Black and Veatch is saying, yeah, we'd like, $300 million, I think is the number, to redo our campus out here and the whole deal. And Overland Park appears to be very giddy to give it to them. I mean, if you're seeing that and you're the Royals and you're like, I've got these star bonds, well, why not try to get a local city element out of this, considering Overland Park is willing to give Black and Veatch $300 million, and Black and Veatch has been there forever, and there's no evidence to suggest that they're going to leave. But if they're going to give Black and Veatch $300 million, what could we fleece them for? I can't help but think that is something that the team has got to be thinking about. I mean, they'd be foolish not to think about that, right? At this point, seeing how Overland Park does its business, why wouldn't they say to Overland Park, what do you got? What can you bring to the table, huh? And I thought I almost caught an Overland Park councilman admitting as much on social media late last week. Oh, Mark, what are you laughing at in there? You know where this is going. You're getting a kick out of this.
Guy,
yeah. This guy in the Overland Park City Council, his name is Drew Matrison, thinks very highly of himself. And he likes to troll once in a while on social media. Usually I ignore the trolls, but I was in a mood on Friday, so I played along. And as I told you guys last week, you knew 9 hours ahead of time here that Kansas was going to extend the star bond offer, right? We told you that before anybody else. on Thursday, I had people in Kansas City media saying, who's your source? As if, yeah, sure, it's Bob Smith. Go ask him. It's like, what are you guys thinking about here? I'm not going to give you that information. But anyway, as I said on Thursday and Friday, we had it for you first here on KCMO. And this Overland Park councilman said to me that I don't get to take a victory lap for my inaccurate reporting, suggesting that it was going to be a 12-month extension. And I'm like, what is he talking about? We told you that they were legally required to extend the Star Bond for 12 months, which was also reported by others earlier in the week before we broke the news that it would be officially extended. What we beat everybody to was that the extension was coming. That's what we beat everyone else on. And we were right about that. And then I ended my tweet to him saying, thank you for your attention to this matter.
Such a nice man.
That's how I ended the tweet. I had to do it. I had to hit him with that.
The day we did our story, everybody else was saying, hey, the 30th isn't necessarily the deadline.
Yep.
Right? That was their version. So our next version was it's going to get extended.
Yep.
So it have to be for 12 months legally because it's written that way.
Exactly. So then the Overland Park Councilman Matrison says, great, impeccable reporting. More time for us to finalize these deals. And I'm like, who's us? And I asked him, I said, who is us? And he says, Kansas. So he got himself out of that one. But I still believe that the way the Overland Park City Council plays ball, no pun intended, they are more than willing to try to do their part, which really means your part, the taxpayer, to make this thing happen. And
Charlie Finley, A's owner in Kansas City, was a visionary. The Chiefs came to town and they got a $1 rental fee to use the stadium, which pissed off Charlie. He's like, hey, I want the deal. And they're like, sorry. So he's like, all right, I'm going to move to Peculiar. Now, back in 1967, Peculiar is way the hell out there. It's still a drive.
Still a drive.
But moving to the burbs there, maybe Charlie had something.
Yeah, he might have been ahead of his time there, John. You're right. A visionary when it comes to where and how to build sports stadiums and how to get ahead of the taxpayer. You're right about that. And when I was emceeing last night, this combat anti-Semitism event that was taking place in the basement of Union Station, there was about 125 people there, 17 states represented. They were all supposed to be in Israel this week, but obviously couldn't go. So they're having this big event this week here in Kansas City. And a lot of folks, obviously, from the Kansas legislature and the Missouri legislature were there. So I kicked off this event last night. I said, hey, guys and gals, a lot of you are going to speak tonight. We heard from both sides of the state line. I said, at the end of the night, we'll do a vote. And whoever gave the best speech, depending on which state they represent, gets the Chiefs, and the losing state gets the Royals. How's that sound? Everybody good with that? And needless to say, there were a few groans in the audience. They weren't digging that. So that's okay. I had to tweak them right to their faces once in a while. Piss them off, keep them straight. 913-408-7957 is how you join us. It is 9:18 here on KCMO Talk Radio. Kevin Keatsman on Canceled. Coming up, speaking of the event last night, the most powerful thing that I wanted to share with you, a story that really encapsulates what the world has been through over the last nearly 2 years now, we'll share on KCMO.
Call Mundo 913-408-7957. Now on 95.7 FM.
On the text line, that's 913-408-7957. Pete, if the Royals or Chiefs moved to Kansas after all the competition, where would the Super Bowl or World Series parade be held? Same place. Same place. It happens in other cities. They do the parade in the downtown area of the city, even if the team doesn't play. And, yeah, there'll be some hurt feelings, but in the end, Quentin Lucas will absolutely allow the city to be used, I believe, for a World Series or a Super Bowl parade because that's money that can be generated for his city. So he's going to want that backdrop. There's no doubt about it. No doubt in my mind. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM, streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Jim in Blue Springs, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I still say that Mark Donovan owes the voters of Jackson County an apology because we voted down that boondoggle first plan, and they would be stuck with some kind of parking garage deck and some cross decks, and that's all they would have got, out of the original plan. And now they have like two great options, whether it's going over to Kansas for the brand new ultra-modern stadium or completely revamping the Arrowhead with state, $1 billion from the state of Missouri. They got the best of both worlds now.
Yeah, 500 from them, 500 from the state. You're right, though. It's actually, as we said, I think the last few weeks, that vote failing the way it did in Jackson County may have worked out much better for both these teams. Fascinating to see that play out. So last night, I had the opportunity, as I noted, to MC this event down at Union Station in the basement, Bank of America Gallery. I'd never been down there for anything before. It's basically you walk in the backside of Union Station from the parking garage. You go to the Science City area, then you go down the escalator, and it's right there on the left side. So it's a nice room, good event space, and this was an event that was put on by the group Combating Anti-Semitism Movement, and they were started by a guy right here in the Kansas City, well, technically the Wichita area, and he started this back in 2019. And little did we all know what the world was going to look like and how things were going to play out the last, especially 18 months or so, when it comes to October 7th, what we've seen on college campuses around the country, and of course, what we've witnessed right here in just Kansas City with the loss of Sarah Milgram, who they honored last night as well. So this organization was started by Adam Barron, and they had a bunch of great speakers, heavy Kansas and Missouri presence, but 17 different states were represented last night. And the highlight of the night by far was Ron Segev, who shared his story on how he survived the October 7th attacks. And hearing this guy, he's 39 years old, go blow by blow. He was at the music festival with a bunch of friends, and how he survived this attack, specifically with his brother. Hearing people getting killed in vehicles 2-3 cars behind him due to a traffic jam, sprinting from that car, bullets whizzing by his head, getting into another vehicle to try to escape the area, was as tremendous and impactful and in-person story as I've ever heard. And he encapsulated the story in about a 15-minute speaking event last night. Everybody got about 10, 15 minutes to speak. And it was one of those moments that I will never forget. And it's a reminder that, I know some people on the left and the right are of this belief, like, who cares? This is real stuff, America, blah, blah, blah. Two things can be true at the same time. And in this case, they absolutely are. Yeah, we have a lot of work to do on the home front, but it's not basically either protect our overseas interests or spend money in urban cores or rural America. It's not an either-or proposition. It never has been. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of obviously Jewish Americans in that room last night, and they love this guy, Donald Trump, right now. Absolutely love him. Our caller of the day on one of our topics of the day, and more with you next.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
We do have some information just came down before we get to our caller of the day. Some breaking news here. We have the name of the suspected gunman in Idaho. He is Wes Raleigh, according to law enforcement officials. That is what they have told the Associated Press as of the last few minutes. The officials spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the investigation. So, there should be another press conference coming up today after the shooting took place last night, killing 2 firefighters and wounding a third after a man with a rifle started the wildfire and then began shooting at first responders in northern Idaho yesterday afternoon. So Wes Raleigh is the suspect identified according to the Associated Press. You know, this reminds me of something Chris Kobach, the Kansas Attorney General, was saying last night. He was speaking at this combat anti-Semitism movement dinner that I was emceeing. And Kobach made a great point. He said, you know, the biggest concern now is how these social media algorithms feed you things to make you think that your beliefs are mainstream. Like it used to be, if there was some rabid Nazi somewhere in the hills of northern Idaho or in his commune in New York City, he might like read books and read articles supporting his beliefs. But there was no social media ecosystem that would make you believe that your beliefs are far more mainstream than they are. But now that's what these algorithms do. I mean, we all see it. If you use Facebook, you use X, Instagram, it doesn't matter. Whatever you like, they feed you more of. That's how the system works. That's how they keep you as a user, a high usage user on their apps. That's the name of the game. Feed you more of what you like, and then that leads you to believe, especially if it's political content, that your beliefs are mainstream. And he said that's the scariest part as a law enforcement officer, and that's what Kobach is technically as the Attorney General. That's what concerns us in law enforcement right now, that these people get radicalized, but they're not just sitting there on their own thoughts. They're able to deal now within networks and meet people online and deal with, all these different groups of folks where they suddenly believe, especially if they're mentally deranged, which obviously most of them are, at least those that go ahead and commit on these acts of violence, that they're somehow in the mainstream. Whether it's the kid that killed the United Healthcare CEO, whether it's what happened to Sarah Milgram in Washington, D.C., the Prairie Village young woman, or any of the other crazy acts of violence, the guy up in Minnesota a couple of weeks ago, you can find anything now on social media that makes you think you're in the right, even if you couldn't be more wrong. So I thought that was an interesting angle last night from Kobach. And by the way, the most nervous I've ever been doing an MC gig was last night when I had to introduce the rabbi. And I said to the organizers, I'm like, how do you say this guy's name? I'm looking at the rabbi's name here. And they're like, they do the whole, they say it in Hebrew. I'm like, guys, I did not get invited to a single bat mitzvah as a kid. I don't know the whole Hebrew thing. I don't do it well. So they're like, oh, just Americanize it. Taiktel was how I pronounced it.
There you go.
But I think it was supposed to be tach. I had to really get all.
I remember in German class, the first thing you work on, roll in the R. Except you don't just roll it like the Spanish. It comes from your throat, blah, 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 blah.
I had to really get into my diaphragm. But then I'm like, I'm spitting all over myself as I'm doing it.
And then you feel like you're making fun of. Because in order to do it right, you have to over-exaggerate because you're not familiar with it. But you feel like you're making fun of it at that point.
So I went up to the rabbi. You're right, John. That's exactly how I was feeling. Mm-hmm. So I went up to the rabbi. I said, listen, rabbi, I'm going to say Taiktel. Don't take it personally. And he's like, he was great about it. You know what he said to me, too? He goes, it's all good. We love KCMO. I'm like, that's my man right there. Yeah. That's my guy. Rabbi Zalman.
How about that?
Taiktel. So then at the back end, after I introduced him, he said his prayer. I said, Rabbi, I've never been this nervous, but I didn't want to do the Taiktel, and I didn't want to screw that up. So I left my Hebrew at home for the day.
When I was in France, you learn about 5 or 6 phrases, and they go, "Oh, you're speaking it well." I feel like I'm just mimicking them, right?
I did my best, man. I did my best. That's good, though. So speaking of the Jews, a guy who's not a fan of the Jews is this guy who's probably the next mayor of New York City, Mamdani. And we talked about him this morning, not because, it's relevant to us here in Kansas City, but if you didn't hear what this guy said, along with his rampant anti-Semitism, he also said this on Meet the Press over the weekend, and that brought up a broader conversation with you on whether or not billionaires are a good thing. Here was Mamdani.
You are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer for all of us.
I love the audacity of this guy. I look forward to working with billionaires to basically try to figure out how to screw them. It's like this guy doesn't realize that these people can leave in a heartbeat. Can't leave? The poor. Same thing we talk about the crime in Kansas City. Folks on Ward Parkway could leave tomorrow. They've got options. Those on the east side in the urban core trying to make ends meet, they can't pick up and leave. So the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable, cannot pick up and leave the hellhole that this guy's going to turn New York City into, worse than it already is. The billionaires are going to tell this guy to pound sand, flip him 2 middle fingers, and go to Florida. That's what they're going to do. And he's got the audacity to be like, I don't think billionaires should exist, but I look forward to working with them to tell them why they shouldn't exist and why they should give me more of their money. Man. Bold move, Cotton. This conversation led to our caller of the day.
It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day. On KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
Let's go to Paul in Kansas City. What's up, Paul? You're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete, I watched the interview with Mondani yesterday. He also doubled down that he's going to go out to Long Island and Staten Island and tax people because they're white. Can you imagine him going over the Verrazano Bridge on those Italian Americans and tell them we're taking your house? That is not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to be popular, man. It's not.
Sir.
It's not. That's a new meaning to the phrase white flight, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what'll happen with this guy. He also wants to tax white neighborhoods or, predominantly white neighborhoods more than others. Suddenly, Quentin Lucas ain't looking so bad, huh? I'm just going to throw that one out there for a hot minute. Think about that for a second. I'm not saying that we should let Quentin Lucas off the hook, but I'm telling you, a lot of these cities, we're going to see this trend continue. They will get bluer and crazier in the years to come. We will get a bluer urban core, and I think we'll get a redder rural majority in many states. And it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out in the years to come. But at some point, one of these major cities just has to totally crash and burn to the point where we can't hear these people say anymore, we just haven't tried socialism right. We just haven't done it the right way. But it's the story arc of places like New York City. They dabble in this, they head down this road, and then suddenly they find themselves deep in it. And it's like, wow, this doesn't work. But the people need to be reminded that it doesn't work. And as we offered up to Bill O'Reilly this morning, he's not in New York City. He's outside of it. But if this Mamdani guy wins, Bill's got a home here in Kansas City. We'll hook him up. We'll get him a good realtor. He can come out and have a great time. We'd love to have him. O'Reilly was on the show this morning, and I did ask him whether or not this past week was Donald Trump's best. Yes or no? What did Bill say? We'll play that answer for you coming up to wrap up the show before Keatsman Uncanceled on KCMO Talk Radio.
It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
Bill O'Reilly was on this morning on KCMO. If you missed it, it'll be up on the podcast after the show wraps up. Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, find it there and subscribe to the show. So, Bill, I asked him out of the gates whether or not he thought last week was Donald Trump's best week ever in office when you combine the successes of the Iranian nuclear strikes, getting that ceasefire deal with Israel and Iran, even though there was a little bit of a hiccup in there, the Supreme Court wins, and the fact that the S&P 500 hit a record high. Bill, he wasn't going to go there with me, but here's what he said.
I don't know about that. I think in his first term, many of Trump's policies, they weren't immediate policies, but they were well grounded, particularly in the inflation area, and of course the tax cuts. So to say that last week was his best week, I don't know if I want to get into that kind of evaluation. But in 2017, Trump cut taxes and got Congress to okay it until now, and that's what that big bill is about. They want to extend it forever, which is not really true because the next Congress come in and knock it right out. But last week, what Trump accomplished was that in the short term, he shut the mullahs down, shut them up, and the stock market, for whatever reason, and I'm not a financial guy, is going up exponentially, so that looks good for him. But I think longer term, all of these things are going to have to play out, particularly the tariffs. And then you're going to have to go into Putin, which is unbelievable. And I'm going to do my YouTube commentary. And we want everybody, the YouTube channel for Bill O'Reilly is free. It's youtube.com/Bill O'Reilly. And I do different things there than I do on the No Spin News. But I'm going to analyze why Trump has not persuaded Putin to be a human being. And a lot of it's in my book, Confronting the President, Confronting Evil, which comes out September 9th. But we're going to do that tonight. But anyway, Trump had a good week. I worry about some of his people becoming arrogant. I've seen it. They're getting a little bit too taken with themselves. That's not good. So that's where we are.
That was Bill O'Reilly. Find the full interview on the podcast after the show this morning, John.
He didn't really make a case for his favorite week, though. On the other hand, he mentioned a year.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know, to your point, I mean, a lot happened, and I don't know that you could compact that much action into any other week.
Well, that's exactly where my head was at.
The world stage, local stage, or not local, but here in the U.S.
That was my point. Not that like the 2017 tax bill is probably his most crowning achievement, but when you talk about the level of wins he had last week in a short period of time, that's why I would have made the case that last week was his best week ever in office when you stack up some of those big wins that he had. But I get what Bill was saying. You probably can't, as the historian, I'll give it to Bill, you probably cannot properly evaluate week by week. I'll give him that much. That's why Bill comes on,
like
knocks some sense into me.
We look at him week to week and get all freaked out. You really have to look at him in a totality of a trend of a month or yearly, et cetera.
Exactly. That's a good point. Congratulations to Slaps Barbecue. Kelly Leffler, who is the small business administrator, was here last week in Kansas City. She was here to pump up the big, beautiful bill with small businesses. She told us on the air that she got Slaps Barbecue. And then Mark just alerted me to the fact that Slaps Barbecue won the Great Lenexa Barbecue Battle over the weekend. How about that? Mark, weren't you a judge for that in previous years?
Yeah, a couple years ago, before we had a baby number 3, I did it 2 years in a row. It was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah. Oh, you ate your face off.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I took some leftovers home. Ate it well for weeks.
That's the part. Yeah.
Of course you did. The girls were eating barbecue for, 15 straight days.
They're like, Dad, come on,
Dad,
please. No.
Daddy, please, something else. Something else, anything. No, you're going to eat this. You're going to eat the pulled pork one more night.
I do not possess the discipline required to here, one bite, right? Because you're judging them. And I want you to load up on anything. I'm like, I can't do that.
That's a good point. It takes a certain guy like a Mark Van Sickle, you know?
I'm sitting there swallowing the bone, pulling it out completely bare,
You'll get
like the
full
Flintstones.
really fast if you do it that way.
Yeah.
Got to pace yourself, man. I was telling my girls about the hot dog eating contest coming up this week. They were disgusted by the concept of dipping the buns in water.
Oh,
They were not having it. I said, we're watching it Friday morning, whether you like it or not, okay? Everyone's going to be on the couch.
That's America.
That's right. That's right. You realize what this country's all about here. And then we're going to watch Trump sign the big, beautiful bill. And then they're going to be like, Dad, can you go to work, please? Get out of here. We're done with you. Speaking of dads, we'll wrap it up with the Dad of the Year. New York Post headline just a few minutes ago. Hero dad dives into the ocean to save his daughter who fell from a Disney cruise. I have never been a cruise guy, and now I have another reason to not be a cruise guy. A fearless father jumped off a Disney cruise ship when his daughter fell overboard, miraculously getting hold of her and then treading water for around 20 minutes before they were both rescued. The Disney Dream cruise ship was heading from Florida to the Bahamas on Sunday when the girl fell overboard from the fourth deck and her dad went in after her. She was about 5 years old. Says here the dad spent about 20 minutes in the sea holding on to his daughter, who appeared to be about 5, before they were both pulled to safety, according to some of the online posts. Lots of prayers from the ship, posted one passenger, Dwayne Smith, on social media, who reported that the little girl fell overboard and her dad jumped in to try and save her. It was not immediately clear how the girl first fell. But there you go. There's your Dad of the Year. Now, I think all of us dads would do that if, God forbid, that were to happen. But to tread the water for 20 minutes with a 5-year-old in your hands, fighting for your life, is a testament to all the dads out there who I know would do the exact same thing. I know you would. I know I would. I know Mark would with his little girls as well. But that is a scary situation. And not that you had to convince me to not get on a cruise ship anytime soon, but that for me is the icing on the cake. And that's the icing on the cake for the show. Kevin Keatsman, uncanceled, is coming your way next. A busy 10 o'clock hour with him before the Vince Show. All the updates there will be coming on the big, beautiful bill. The Senate debate is ongoing, and we're back tomorrow morning at 6.